If you win it on price, you're going to lose it on price. I think if you don't have the relationship with that customer, somebody else that has a better relationship or is forging a better relationship, they're going to win that business.
Put that coffee down.
Creators are leaders. Be careful what kind of leaders you're producing here.
Helen, we're both in sales.
Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
They realized that to be in power, you didn't need guns or money or even numbers. You just needed the will to do what the other guy wouldn't.
I'm not leaving. The show goes on.
Well, hello there, friend. Welcome to the Construction Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Bradley Hartman. And on the show, we deliver ideas and insights from leaders across the construction industry every single week to help you lead more effectively. I would like to thank our presenting sponsor, Capital One Trade Credit. They make it easy for you to grow your top line by extending credit in a very intelligent way to your customers. And the giving never ends. Let me rattle off some of these things that make it easy for you to use Capital One Trade Credit. Pre-screening, online applications, tailored solutions, funding, that's right, funding, risk protection, payment options, servicing, and online tools, including the Smart View dashboard. The giving never ends at Capital One Trade Credit. You, my friend, should check it out, see if it's right for you. Capital One Trade Credit. Now, I'm excited to share with you today my conversation with Mr. Dan Efenecy. He's the market sales manager at Carter Lumber, based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, what you will hear in this conversation is a very smart, insightful, and very humorous. I really enjoyed talking to Dan, and you're going to see with his background, he has such a wide, nuanced range of prior experiences that I think really build up and deliver a lot of value in this role that he is in now. Coming out of high school, he joined the United States Marine Corps. Returning to civilian life, he didn't know what he wanted to do, so then he moved into plumbing supply sales. Then he ended up at Huber Engineered Woods. For more than a decade, he was at BFS, he was at Wood Grain, Louisiana Pacific, and he's been at Carter for going on 4 years. So Dan and I cover a lot of territory in this conversation. We talk about leadership. We talk about sales. We talk about personal branding that applies to every single person in the industry. We talk about managing emotions to lead and manage other people effectively. And Dan shares a lot of insights and ideas on how to hire more effectively, especially this next generation of Gen Z folks that are entering our business. Now, what was discussed offline was a very unique opportunity I'm excited to partner with Dan on, and this could very much involve you. That's right. This is a teaser. I'm not going to tell you too much about it. What I will tell you is at the end of 2022, early 2023, Dan and I are going to be announcing something that you and everyone listening will have the opportunity to join us doing. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you're thinking, oh, let me guess, this is Hartman. He's selling some new thing that's going to enrich him in some sort of way. First of all, I'm not above that, and I'll be really direct when that happens. Number two, no, I'm not. I'm not going to profit in any way, but it will be a way to bring the entire construction industry together, and I'm really excited about it. So that's going to come later. So we're going to announce that later. Little teaser there for you. You know you're going mainstream and corporate in the media world when you start doing consistent teasers. Oh well, I did it and we're doing it and that's how it's done. So there you go. Without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Mr. Dan Efenecy, Market Sales Manager at Carter. Mr. Carter Lumber in Charlotte, North Carolina. All right, let's get on with this thing. So Mr. Dan Efenecy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bradley. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, me too, man. So let's do this. Let's start with the name. When I first called you for our pre-call, I just kind of blurted out. I'm like, man, you got to help me out. What's going on with this name? Efenecy. And you gave me a very helpful hint that you also said ended up in the back of your kids' jerseys. Tell that story for me.
Yeah, with a name like Efenecy, I've seen it spelled wrong hundreds of times. And when we go out to dinner, I don't tell him Efenecy. I just tell him Daniel. But Efenecy, when you got kids, all the teachers are calling. Hey, how do we pronounce this? And I said, it's pretty easy, like 3 letters, an FNC. And subsequently, when my kids were playing sports, on the back of their jersey, instead of spelling out the whole name and getting it butchered every which way you could, I told them, I said, just put 3 letters, FNC. And they're like, everybody's like, oh, that's really cool. But with a name like that, you got to figure out an easy way to help people.
That's true. And I imagine there's the potential for the secondary issue when you have a 3-letter acronym and the first letter's F. Sometimes you'll have to guide them towards, no, that's just phonetically how we say it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It can get a little interesting sometimes when I spell it out. It's like EF. They're like, what? I'm like, just spelling the last name. I'm not looking for anything else.
Oh, that's great, man. Well, hey, part of life is being memorable and standing out. And that, as soon as you said literally the letters FNC, I was like, boom, that's now every email I send to you just says Dan FNC. And I feel pretty strong about it.
Yeah, makes it a little bit easier for everybody.
Yeah. So as we're thinking about Dan, we're thinking about your kids, take me back to your childhood. You're 12 years old. Tell me, where are you? And if I'm talking to a 12-year-old Dan Efenecy at that point, and I say, what do you think you're going to be when you grow up? What does that Dan of your past say to me?
Yeah, let's see. Let's go back. 12 years old, living in North Haven, Connecticut.
Okay.
6th grade. My father was in sales at the time, working for a trucking company. I kind of saw it firsthand what he was doing. I kind of liked the idea. So as much as I knew what he did, kind of following him around and going to his office on weekends, it was either going to be sales or I was going to go in the military. One of the two. At 12 years old, had that thought.
And as it turns out, check the box on both.
And it turned out I did both. Absolutely. Yep. Marine Corps right after high school. And then after that, got into doing some plumbing work. And then the way I was going, it wasn't going to last too long. So I got into selling plumbing supplies. And then from there, the sales gig was on. I was hooked right away. I like the idea of trying to help people and meeting with people. No day being quite the same. So it kind of had me right at the get-go.
Yeah. Was there something you remember from seeing your father, or maybe it was later, maybe it was in plumbing, where you saw the sales role and instead of like most people being totally repelled by it, we're like, okay, that's attractive. I like that. I think I could do that. And what was it?
Yeah, I saw my dad in action. I went with him a couple times when it was Bring Your Kid to Work Day. I went with him, and then we went into a couple meetings. I dressed up when I was a kid and went with him, and I kind of saw the whole interaction, and I kind of liked the idea of that. But also, when I was working first at the plumbing supply house, selling plumbing supplies, somebody came in, they had an issue, we talked about it, I helped him solve it, and then he went away and he came back the next time and he said, hey, that worked great. And I thought, nice. I was able to help him. Because a lot of the guys on the counter were working initially, they didn't have any plumbing experience, and I did. So it was able to lend the experience what I had already previously done. So it helped out, and I thought, you know what, I kind of like this idea. I couldn't see myself sitting at a desk 9 to 5. It just wasn't in my DNA.
Yeah, well, you used a word twice now that is one that I think is really powerful. And I think for a lot of people, it reframes the profession or the craft of selling. You've said helpful. And too often we'll see folks that are kind of struggling, or maybe they feel a pull to be into sales, but they don't think they can do it, or they're in sales and they're really struggling. And I said, sometimes you just got to be helpful. Like, forget all of the other stuff. Forget about your commission. Forget about the margin. Just try to be helpful, try to be useful. And if you can do that, and you can get the satisfaction that you had of someone saying, hey, that thing you told me to do, I did it and it worked. Thank you. Hey, that's gratifying. And I said, if you do that enough, even if you don't make money, now in a long enough timeline, you'll have to earn some commission for that. But I said, you do that long enough, word will get around, because useful people earn a reputation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I think about too is just having a conversation.
Yeah.
Just talking to them, getting to know them, asking a few questions. I went out to a job site earlier today. I never met the gentleman. We're going to provide them trusses. And he was the superintendent on the job. And I called him earlier this week and I said, hey, when are you going to be there on Friday? He said, all day. I said, I'll come by at 10. So I had never met him. I just walked in, introduced myself, and we just started talking. how you doing? How's the day going? You have kids? And he said, yeah. He said, they play football. I said, great. And I started talking about my kids. And next thing you know, we got some things in common because we're in the same industry. Shake his hand when we leave. And I said, do you have everything for this project? He said, actually, I still need a few things. I said, if you want to send me the specs, I'll see what we can do. But it was just a good conversation is all it was. Now, was it sales, Bradley? Sure. Sure, it was sales. But ultimately, if I can help them satisfy what they need for that project, they'll call me back the next time. And ultimately, I just want to make it easier for them to say yes. If I can get what they need and it works out and it's a fair price, I don't want to be the cheapest. But is it a fair price? Sure. So where I work, even though I'm the market sales manager, we're still selling. My VP sells, our install manager sells, I sell. The way we look at it is it's kind of a team sport. It's not a solo effort. So it was good. It was a good meeting. It was more conversations, really what it was.
Yeah, I like that. And this takes me back to a call I had just a few hours ago. And maybe I'll frame this for you. So we have someone listening. Maybe they're a sales rep. Maybe they're a sales manager. And they'll say something like this: Dan Hartman, if I'm being honest with you guys, I get it. Putting on my boots, going out at the job site, meeting those guys, having those conversations. Do I know that's important? Yes. Yes, I do. However, it's just everything else in the business just weighs me down and I just can't make time for that. How would you help coach them to understand the value of what you just described?
Yeah, so during that meeting, Bradley, we talked about what transpired in the world the last couple of years. We talked about COVID, we talked about the supply chain issues, and we were talking about Zoom. He said, I did so many Zoom meetings, I couldn't do another one. And I said, yeah, during the pandemic, we were doing the Zoom meetings. And we were knocking out sales meetings in 30, 31 minutes. And I remember I came into my VP's office and I said, hey, what do you think of that? We got everything covered in 31 minutes. And he just looked at me and he shook his head. He said, not happening again. I said, well, why is that? He said, because I can't see them. I can't look in their eyes. I can't have the conversation with them. He said, it's vitally important when we're doing this as a business. And so back to your question, it's vitally important that we do this face to face because there's too many emails. You can't tell the response in an email. You can't tell how somebody is acting, in a text. It's too impersonal.
Right.
It still is all about relationships. Does price have an impact? Sure it does. But there's a lot of value. I love how you end the podcast, sell value first. And I use that with my sales guys and they're like, oh, that's a great one. I said, it's not original, but you have to sell the value. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about a relationship because I tell my sales guys this time and time again. I said, if you win it on price, you're going to lose it on price. I said, if you don't have the relationship with that customer, somebody else that has a better relationship or is forging a better relationship, they're going to win that business. And how do you do it? I mean, sure, it's getting back to them. Emails are fine if you're getting back to them with specs and pictures of doors or windows or whatever you're trying to quote them that they're getting it to their homeowner. But as far as the face-to-face, you really can't beat it. You have to get out of the office. I got guilty from time to time sitting in the office and being behind my desk and almost feeling like I was a sales analyst. But when push comes to shove, that's not my comfort zone. And I got to get out in the field and get a little dirt on the tires and dirt on the boots.
Now, that's a really powerful statement. And I think that awareness is what a lot of folks struggle with is, did I cross a line to spend more of my time analyzing the data or some metrics beyond what other people are doing, as opposed to helping them with the things they're actually doing? But that's a real slippery slope. And I've seen guys be like, you know what? Like they wake up and I'm like, I blacked out. Like, Hartman, I've been doing this for 9 months. And until something happens, it's really easy to slip into that.
It is. And I think the coronavirus had a lot to do with that because everybody was sent home. Pretty much everybody was sent home. At Carter, where I'm working, there was about 6 or 8 of us in the facility other than our door shop.
Okay.
And then you start crunching numbers and you start looking at the budgets and you start looking at the sales and putting all that together. And then the spreadsheets get bigger and bigger and bigger. And next thing you know, they have 27 columns and I can crunch numbers any which way I can.
Right.
But the problem with that is that it's kind of like anything. We get into habits. During the pandemic, guys stopped prospecting because they were sent home. After about a month and a half, the first sales rep called me and he's like, "Hey, Dan, my wife told me that I'm driving her nuts. Can I get out and start calling on customers?" I said, "Yeah, just be smart about it." And then quickly after that, the second and third call, the next thing you know, I got 19 phone calls and all the guys are going, "We can't do this anymore. We're not built to sit at home." And I'm like, just do what you got to do, but just be safe and be smart. But throughout the pandemic and the supply chain being an issue, business started cranking and we started selling a lot of material. And I would be wrong to say that they didn't work hard for the business. They did work hard for the business, but there was a lot of pent up demand. So the business just started flowing and it was a different hard work, but they didn't prospect. And I talked to a couple of the guys and I said, "Hey, how's your prospecting going?" And then a couple I know will shoot me straight. They said, "We're not prospecting." I'm like, "Why not?" They're like, "We just don't have time for it." So I talked to them. I said, you have to hunt before you're hungry. I said, eventually there's going to be a recession, a regression, a downturn. Even cities that are doing really well, such as a city like Charlotte, where I'm located, that there's a lot of people coming to, there still is going to be somewhat of a slowdown. So I'm talking to these sales reps. I'm explaining to them about the importance of prospecting. They're weeding it back into their schedule, but it's kind of like anything. We're creatures of habit. So when they stop doing it until somebody starts talking to them routinely about it, especially if they're not making their numbers, it's an easy conversation. Mm-hmm. Hey, tell me what you're doing to change this month versus last month. And to be honest, if they're not making their numbers right now, something's probably wrong. They're probably doing things that are not conducive to achieving those budgets. And you said it earlier, they're not doing this. They're not in front of their customer enough. They're getting bogged down in the other details. And to me, that's an organizational issue.
Well, I know you are a gym guy, right? More so than this guy. I think that's evidence here by what we're looking at. And here's the question for you, right? And I've been using this term atrophy. Like anyone who's ever tried to obtain muscle and then maybe get it for a moment and have it leave or maybe keep it on, is atrophy is what we want to stay away from. What do you do from a coaching perspective, from a sales leadership perspective? And I would say this, we're talking about sales here. This applies to anybody, is when the results that you are getting on the surface, they are meeting or exceeding expectations. But the underlying cause that typically will drive this is atrophy. In this case, hey, I'm making my numbers, Dan. Easy, man. I got it. Are you prospecting? I'm not at all. That prospecting muscle is withered and is gone. So how do you coach folks to do that? So by the time they realize, I got to start prospecting, by the time that hits, it's already too late. Now, the question is, are you 90 days behind or 6 months behind? But how do you coach folks to do that? Because it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's not. And, my VP and I, when we talk about how to influence the sales reps and what to do, it's hard because most companies in our industry are probably, or they should be making a lot of money right now. Subsequently, the sales reps are making a lot of money. So when they're making a lot of money, sometimes they look back at me and go, "Dan, I'm doubling my budget." And so it's harder when that happens. But I just remind them, I said, especially if they've been doing it for any length of time, and some of them have. And I said, "Do you remember 2008 to 2012? And they're like, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." I said, there was a lot of really good companies that are no longer in business. Mm-hmm. A lot of great builders are no longer building. A lot of great building material companies are no longer in business. Manufacturers not in business. I said, we don't know what the future is going on. We know that the interest rates are going up. We know the inflation's going up. We're seeing cracks. So I tell them, I said, it's better to have an opportunity and not need it, as opposed to have that opportunity and not have done the work. So what I started doing was assigning some accounts to about half the team. I have 19 reps that I manage. I kind of split them in half. Half of them are very seasoned and been doing it for a while. Half are newer, or they're not making their numbers, one of the two. So for that half, I started assigning them accounts and asking them to do a little work. I don't like micromanaging at all. Matter of fact, I will not do it. I've told the reps, I said, the only way I would ever micromanage is if you're not able to manage your own business. If I have to get involved to that point, that's when something's wrong with the picture. But I wanted to help them and say, hey, here's a couple companies that we're not doing business with that really we should. So it's kind of a twofold. One was to help them prospect again. One was to help them grow their business, especially if they weren't making their numbers.
Okay. You've mentioned your VP a couple times. You told me that there was an instance relatively recently, maybe give me a little bit of the context, where he came in and basically said, hey, we need to start reading more books. Fill in around that a little bit. Correct that if I'm misremembering this at all, but tell me what led up to that and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so we have a market manager meeting every 2 weeks, and we bring all of our general managers. Our VP leads the meeting. Area ops manager, install manager, myself are in there. And he realizes the tide's changing a little bit, and that business as it's been is probably not going to continue to come at the pace it's currently coming. And because we're all creatures of habit, including our leadership team, he wants to make sure that we are doing the utmost we can to manage and lead. So he recommended that we grab a book or two on leadership and management, and that we start reading these things so that way we can continually get better. He's of the same volition that I am, is that whether we're in sales, management, or leadership, we're either moving forward or moving backward. We're not standing still. We could be moving quickly or slowly backward, but it's kind of like anything. If we're reading about management, if we're reading about leadership, if we're listening to podcasts, we're getting better. I would love the sales team to be continuous learners, where they don't ever think they have it. On my phone, I think I have 106, 108 books. There's probably about 80 of them that are audio books, and the rest are just regular books that I thumb through. Although I've been in sales for 20 plus years, I don't think I know it all. And that's what we kind of look for in our sales reps too. There's certain key traits that we look for when we're hiring people. But to me, that's one of them. It's continuous improvement is what we're trying to preach within our leadership team.
Yeah, and that's certainly a habit as well. From a leadership standpoint, any book come to mind that you'll either say, hey, this is actually one that I reread or some of the other guys read, or one in the past that you would say, in terms of just overall leadership, that was either a good reminder or good reinforcement? Anything come to mind, Dan?
Yeah, there's, I think of 3 books right off the top of my head. Organize Tomorrow Today is a book by Jason Selk and Tom Bartow. Great book, not just on organizational skills, but also many, many areas of business are involved in that book. That was a great one. I've reread that one multiple times. Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink, Leif Babin. That's a book that I've read in paperback. Matter of fact, it's behind me on one of these shelves. I've got the audio book because I want to listen to it. As I'm driving down the road from time to time, I want to be able to listen to it as well. And then what we did prior to the pandemic, we started we selected a book, and a number of our leadership team started reading it. And it was It's Your Ship by Michael Abrashoff.
Yeah.
And it was a great book. He took over a very dysfunctional ship in the Navy. I think he had 310 sailors on board. And he subsequently transformed that ship into one of the worst to amongst the best. And he very much detailed how he went about it. So we started reading that book. And some people kind of looked at me when I walked in, and, the short haircut, they realized, they're like, oh, gracious, here we go. Sergeant Slaughter's coming out here. Here's his book.
He's only picking the military books. What are we going to do?
And I told them, and I said, let's pick a book. And they all kind of looked at me. I said, I don't have a problem picking books. But what I explained to them in the beginning, I said, regardless of whether we're in the military, we're in business, or we're in athletics, it's the same skills that allow us to be great. They transfer to each of the 3. So I said, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about a business book, an old book from GE and Jack Welch, something like that, or a military book. It's the same exact skills. And that's why, Extreme Ownership with Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, that's what allows them to be successful. They were SEALs. They took what they learned in the battlefield and leading SEALs, and now they have a company, a leadership company, or they're able to help people. So to me, it's just it's an easy transfer about leadership and helping people. And they have one of their phrases: "There's no bad teams. There's only bad leaders."
Yeah.
And I thought, sometimes I think about that with a sales team, and I thought, okay, if my guys are missing the mark, it's not about them. It's what am I not doing? So I have to step back, and sometimes I'll do that on Saturday or Sunday, sitting in the office I'm sitting in right now, and go, what should I be doing differently? because each one of them is an individual, and whether they're in that top group or the secondary group, what am I doing, or what should I be doing differently to help them? Because some I can just tell it to them and they'll go do it. Others, if they're lacking in sales, there might be a lack of belief. There may be not enough customers. There may be quite a few things going on. They have life happening. Mm-hmm. So that's where I talk to them, and maybe we'll go out and grab a lunch. Hey, what's going on? Big fan of Mike Weinberg as well, and a lot of his books. And what I'll do is I'm getting back to it. We did it pre-pandemic. We didn't do it during the pandemic, but I'm bringing it back where I'll have monthly meetings. And we'll review their sales, where they were the previous month, their sales, their gross margin dollars, or gross margin percentage. And then we'll look at how they stand the current month they're in. And then I'll look at their targets. And if everything looks good, then it's a 30-minute meeting. But if it's not so good, and I'll come away from my desk, we'll sit at the table in my office, and we'll ask questions. What's going on? Bradley, in this business, sometimes you're a coach, sometimes you're a therapist, sometimes you're their manager, sometimes you're their friend. And you just have to ask them and just say, hey, I'll be honest with you, when are you starting your day? Because it doesn't appear you're doing enough, and they might tell me. Sometimes they'll say, kids, and they're in school, they're in a different school, we moved, I'm not starting till like 8 a.m. now. I thought, okay, that's probably an hour too late. Mm-hmm. But did you get ready the night before? Did you prep for today last night? If you're able to do that, you probably set yourself up. But if you wake up and you just wing it, it's not going to work that way. Unfortunately, it'll be a short career for them.
Yeah, you had mentioned a wonderful question that I'm totally going to screw it up, but I'm going to do it anyway. You'll know what I'm talking about. You said something to the effect of, when coaching individuals, whether they're meeting their numbers or they're not, of trying to really draw out, do you know the things that you are doing consistently that deliver the results that you want, or maybe the ones that you're getting? And you said something to the effect of, the foundational principles that drive predictable results for you, what are they? And then you were mentioning that this conversation recently with someone elicited the, I'm not so sure. And you said, I think you should go think about that. Walk me through that, because I think this idea, especially with the results that we've gotten as an industry over the last couple of years, there's a lot of unconscious competence, which is, I do what I do, I get it done, Dan. Ask me what I do, I don't know the details, but I just know when I do it, I get it done. And you're like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. So with some of the guys, it just feels like they have so many sales just coming to them because of the customers and being in the market that we're in, that they're still working hard, but it's a different working hard. But the results aren't predictable. I coached sports for 23 years. I gave it up last year, but I coached soccer. And I would talk to the players about, I thought, if you're just going to come and train with me for 3 hours a week, it's not going to work. You're going to be average just like everybody else. You're going to have to do work away from the field. And I referenced, because of their ages, they were in high school. I said, it's the same thing with history. If you show up and they say, hey, there's a test today and you didn't study, you're not going to do good. But there's certain behaviors that you should be doing that will lead to success. And it's the same thing in the sales world. And I talked to them and I said, are you prepping, as we mentioned earlier, are you prepping the night before? Are you looking at your calendar to see what you have the next day? Have you done the pre-work before you go to a meeting? Are you just walking in and just hoping that things work out? Have you set up an agenda for the meeting? Do you have goals for the meeting? Do you understand what you're doing? What's the outcome of the meeting? It's just not going and having the gift of gab. It's having a pre-meeting with whomever you're going with, whether it's yourself or the VP or myself. But it's doing the things on a daily basis that allow you to be successful. And I tell a lot of them, sometimes they want to sit in the office and think about it. I said, this isn't into thinking. This is into action. You've got to get out and see the customers. You've got to set up a schedule. And I've got some really good guys that will help lead some of the younger guys, and they'll put together what they do. And so sometimes we'll bring a younger guy in. I'll assign him to one of the seniors, and I'll say, hey, take a look at that and work with him and see what you can do and come out of that.
Yeah.
A little bit long-winded answer there.
No, well, I kind of have this joke that I'll refer to as kind of the Woody Allen rule, which Woody Allen said, 90% of success in life is just showing up. And I'll say to salespeople in general, it's 90%. It's not 100. Like, it's not literally just showing up. If you just take a little more time and do some prep work and be generous and be thoughtful, well, now you will immediately stand out. But it's not 100% just showing up. It's something close to that.
It is. And what we try to do when we hire sales reps, certainly, but other positions as well, we kind of look for what we call the how.
Okay.
And the how is the acronym is H is, do they have the hard work gene? O is, are they open-minded? And W, are they willing? Bradley, when we find people that have those three characteristics or those three traits, we find that they're significantly easier to teach, regardless whether it's a manager or a sales rep. Even if they have two of the three, we'll often bring them on. But we look for those three because that way they realize they don't know everything. Even one of my guys that I work with, and he's been doing this about 20 years, he's like, I don't know it all. I love the fact that he's open-minded and willing because they're significantly easier to teach. If we stay around this industry long enough, you run into some folks that know it all, and unfortunately, they're not teachable anymore.
Yep.
And when you're not teachable, that's when ideally, it's time to retire. But when they have those skills, it makes life significantly easier. But they have to be open-minded to me asking questions too. So we go about that in the interview process when we're bringing them on.
How do you suss out if they're hardworking? I'm assuming you do not ask, let me ask you, Dan, are you a hard worker? Yes, as a matter of fact, I am. How do you figure that out unless they worked on like a pig farm growing up?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Normally we'll do 2-person interviews, and we'll have a couple teams interview because that way we get a good impression, and we wait until everybody's done, and we'll talk about it sometimes the next day. So that way, what we do is we try to eliminate the emotion and just make it about intellect rather than emotion. But we'll ask a variety of questions. One of the ones, and I said, what was the first job you ever had? And depending on their age, they might say, one guy said to me, I deliver newspapers. I'm like, cool, afternoon or morning? And he said, morning. And I said, that was not the best route, was it? And he's like, no, I wanted the afternoon one, but I had to prove I could work, so I did the morning one.
Right.
So we'll ask questions. When was the first job you ever had? Was it cutting lawns? Was it landscaping? Depending on where you lived, was it shoveling snow in the north? What was it? And then what we want to know, too, is we can glean a lot of things out of them when we ask questions. What'd your mom and dad do? We want to get an idea of who they are and what they were. So we try to find out whether they have the hard work gene inside of them. There's obviously a lot of questions that we could use. And if you Google, you could find thousands of questions. Can you tell me about a scenario?
Right.
Again, we want to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to do. Because to us at Carter Lumber, we are Carter Lumber. It's a logo on my shirt. It's a logo on the truck. It's a logo on the business card. But ultimately, we're Carter Lumber. So if we can bring on people that can take care of the company when somebody's not standing next to them, that's ideally who we want to bring on. And then we ask more questions too. We want to check their open-mindedness and check their willingness, and just ask as many questions as we can, but make it conversational, not like they're getting hit by one and then hit by the other, and just kind of see. And then, do you have any questions at the end? It's a typical one. And one of the guys asked a great question. He said, "What question should have I asked that I didn't ask?" And I thought, I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. He got hired. It's pretty neat because we're starting to get some younger guys come into the industry now as well. So that's kind of encouraging.
Well, at the end of the day, you think about what we do it's a hard to define litmus test. But if I had to sit and talk to this guy for 30 minutes, would I want to do that? And if you get done and you're like, it's a little bit awkward, it wasn't great, but he was okay. Well, think about what you are going to be unleashing on the market in Charlotte with a whole bunch of people who are going to be, because they're nice people, they're going to be agreeing to sit down with this individual for 20 or 30 minutes. And if you don't like talking to them, odds are these other people aren't. So I think what you're talking about is just having a conversation. Do I like being around this guy? And can I stomach 30 minutes? Well, if we can't do that, that's a sign, right?
Yeah. And inevitably, one of the questions that we ask towards the end when the 4 or 6 of us are getting around, if they're a sales rep, would you buy from this guy? That's kind of the litmus test. Would you buy from this guy? And if the answer is yes, then we bring them on. And if there's a question, we don't want to bring them on. We ideally want to hire, of the 19 sales reps, we don't want to hire somebody that's going to fall into the bottom third of that team. We want to hire somebody that's going to fall into the middle. We want to hire ahead of the need as best as possible. And we want to bring on people that are willing to upgrade what we're doing. The easy part, Bradley, is to go out and hire somebody, a competitor sales rep. Hey, there's their top guy, let's bring them in. How much of the business comes? A small portion, smaller than I think everybody thinks. Yep. But the problem with that too is you don't get to grow that individual. You don't get to groom that individual. They show up with their great talents and their not so great talents. Mm-hmm. So if we can groom them from within, we like that idea. I've got a 21-year-old sales trainee right now. I've got a 26-year-old sales trainee right now. And we're looking to add to our staff currently. Explain to both of them that you can make a great living in this industry. But it's kind of like any other industry. If you put the time in and you do the work, mm-hmm. you'll do great. And if you don't, you're not going to do well.
Yeah. You said something that I want to hit on here that had me think about this book. I don't know if you ever saw this. This is Tom Peters. It's called The Brand You 50. And I don't know, are you familiar at all with Tom Peters of McKinsey fame?
I am, yes.
All right. So Tom Peters, I went through I almost got a Tom Peters tattoo when I was finishing my MBA program before I launched. And he, just from an operational standpoint, and I think a sales and branding standpoint, I bought all his books and I probably read this thing 3 or 4 times. But you had mentioned when you were talking to one of your sales reps, you were encouraging them to think like an entrepreneur. And you were saying, imagine this is, and I won't say whatever his name is that I wrote down before, but Thompson Enterprises, and Tom Peters will talk about it's brand you. It's you Inc. You are the company.
Yes.
I thought you articulated that really well. Could you go into that a little bit and what that conversation looks like?
Yeah. So this sales in particular has been doing, he's been doing sales with us about 4 years. He's still in his 20s. He tied the record for sales in a single year, the top mark, as far as a first year employee. So he's got a lot of what we call the how, the hard work, open-minded willingness. He's got a lot of that, but he's coachable as well too. And I felt like due to the pandemic, he certainly wasn't coasting Bradley, but he maybe took it out of 5th gear and put it into 4th.
Okay.
And I told him, I said, I want you to treat this as Thompson Enterprises. I want you to treat this as your own business. We at Carter Lumber will pay for all the material. We'll pay for the trucks. We'll pay for the leadership. We'll pay for all the managers. We'll pay for everybody to do this. All you have to do is sell. But I want you to treat this like it's your own company. And then sometimes you have to take it a little bit farther. If this was your own company, would you start at 8 a.m.? Or would you start at 7? Would you have goals written out? Or would you just kind of wing it? I said, this is how you're going to take care of your family. So think about this. And, I'm big on the goals part. And I talked to the guys, and a couple of them, one in particular, he said, I've never cracked $1 million in December. This was a few years ago. And I said, how do you think you can get there? And he said, obviously through my customers. And I said, well, who's going to help you get to $1 million? So we put it all down on paper, and he said, I think I can get $1,086,000. And he called me right at January 3rd or 4th. He's like, you in the building? I said, I am. He's like, can you come on over? I said, sure, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I went over there. He's like, you're not going to believe this. I said, what's that? He's like, I got $1,050,000. But what I didn't say was, prior to him starting December, I said, put that $1,086,000, put it on a Post-it note in your truck. I said, just humor your wife. Tell her you're not going to leave it there the whole time. Stick it in the bathroom mirror. Stick it on your computer. So that way you can see this. And he did it. He cracked $1 million in December. And at the time, that was, that wasn't an easy feat to do. So he did it. And I've talked to a number of the guys, and I said, what you do is what you choose to do. I said, but the limit, how much you can earn, is 100% up to you. You just have to do the work. And I try to find something in their background that will allow me to kind of help them understand what they were doing. That one gentleman I was talking to, he'd been there 4 years. He tied the record. He was a wrestler. And I told him, I said, if you didn't practice, what was the next event going to be like? He said, it wasn't going to be good. I said, it's the same thing in sales. You got to get better. You have to learn how to ask questions. You have to learn that if they're not calling you back, well, there's probably not a compelling reason for them to call you back. If you lost a customer, It's easy to blame the customer. Well, they did this, or the competition did this. What is your part in it?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at your side of the street, what didn't you do? Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Well, no. And I said, okay. I'm just trying to help you get better. If we did an autopsy without blame, how would this look? And I told him, I said, I'm here to help you. I said, I'm not here to do anything other than make you a better sales rep. But if you're not going to do these things, you're not going to get to be where you want to be. And we publish our list. We put our sales reps out, and every Monday they're going to see the previous week's sales. They'll see the previous week's sales, the month-to-date sales, and year-to-date sales, along with everybody else. And that's great if you're in the top third. But some of the guys don't have a big enough accounts to get pushed into that other third. But if they're constantly in the bottom, that's the ones where I'll go back to the Mike Weinberg books, and I'll meet with the sales guys, and I'll talk to them. What aren't we doing? And it's not pleasant if I have to say, hey, let's take a look at your calendar. Show me how many builder calls you made last month. But sometimes that has to happen. We just want them to get better with what they're doing. And ultimately, I want to help them.
Yeah. And I think for any domain that we are dealing with, there is some reference point for the law of large numbers. If you do this enough, if I'm a superintendent on a job site for a residential builder, if I talk to enough people, or I do A, B, and C, if I do that enough, the law of large numbers is just going to take care of itself. And the same thing applies in sales. Sometimes we know it, but we're deceiving ourselves. And to your point, and you've referenced this multiple times. And by the way, I think it's coming today. Earlier in the week when we talked, you told me about that book, Organized Tomorrow Today. And I bought it. So I'll be diving into that soon. And I think a lot of it comes down to combination of what you're alluding to with, the Jocko Willink of extreme ownership. How do you and you alone take ownership of that? And what can you do no matter what that outcome is? And if you can tie it back to your time, sometimes it's just a little bit of reflection, but it's not like these answers are unknowable. And you said it before on our call. You said, success, it leaves clues. And I'll say failure, it leaves clues as well. When you do something dumb and you don't succeed, you're probably like, I could have done that. Like, these aren't unknowable things.
Yep. It's like when something doesn't go right, what are you going to do? It's easy to blame the guys in the back who loaded the truck up. It's easy to blame the dispatcher. But, it doesn't take any talent to do that. It takes more talent than to step aside and remove your emotions and say, okay, what didn't work right? If I'm accountable for the success and the lack of it, what could have I done differently to allow for more success? What didn't I communicate to the guys that I should have communicated to them? And how do we get better? Because there's always a lesson in how we can get better. And I explain that to them. And it goes back to the success leaves clues. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it a couple of times, prepping the night before. It's a massive difference between the guys that do that and the guys that don't. I'm talking to an inside guy, right? And he's kind of an old school guy. And I get it. He uses a notebook. I get it. I've got one right here.
So do I. Yeah.
But we need him to also use a spreadsheet where it's a shared spreadsheet, so that way multiple people can see it. So when he's not in, he's calling on customers, we have access to it. And he'll end up using it because he'll end up seeing the value of it. But I told him, I said, how are you following up on some of those now? Well, I go back and I flip the pages. And I said, wouldn't it a lot be easier if you had that spreadsheet where you could take a look at this and maybe even color code it? And he's like, what do you mean? And so I showed him a spreadsheet I had. I said, hey, I don't advocate this for everybody, but for the customer that I have, it's a lot of moving parts and pieces. It's easy for me to get lost in the details. So I suggested he do that. And he told me, he's like, hey, next week, can you sit down and talk to me about how to use that and what I need to do and how I need to do it? So basically what he's telling me is, yeah, I'll do it, but I need to know why. And it goes back to, if I can explain the why to him, he'll get it. If I can't explain the why, if it's too complex, he won't get it. And it won't make sense to him.
Got it. Well, hey, man, I appreciate your time. I've learned a lot from you. We're going to do this together. We're going to plant a little teaser here because there's something that you and I are going to follow up on. We'll probably do a mini pod here in another, I don't even know, 60, 90 days. But there's something that you presented to me that I jumped all over. I'm already at the halfway down the football field going to score here. You and I are going to come back here in a couple months to announce something that I think is going to be an opportunity for everyone listening. And as you know, I've already texted you a couple times about it. I'm really excited about it. It's something we've talked about here. We're going to leave it as kind of a little Easter egg of sorts, a little nugget that we'll come back to later. But Dan, I appreciate you making time, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Bradley, I greatly appreciate you having me on the podcast. I'm a big fan of the podcast. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I love how you close it out, deliver value first. I think my sales guys are getting a little tired of me saying that one, but I think it's a spectacular line for what we do. So again, thank you very much. And I look forward to listening to your podcast the rest of this year.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you. Thanks. All right, then, friends, how did that go? If you're anything like me, all you can visualize right now after talking to Dan Efenecy is to imagine a soccer shirt worn by his kids with 3 bold letters on the back where the name goes, F-N-C. And when I send him emails, that's what I put, Dan F-N-C. Exactly. You look at his last name too long as it's spelled out, you're just going to get confused. It gives you a headache. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Hopefully you learned something from that. I am going to refer back to the teaser. I'm going to connect with Dan. We're going to have him back on the show for a few little insights to share, and we're going to announce something cool that we are doing at the end of 2022 or early 2023, and you, my friend, can get involved. It's something that we can do together to bring this whole construction industry together. It's going to be a lot of fun. More to come on that. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Capital One Trade Credit. If you want to improve your online tools with tailored solutions, with funding available to help you run a better business, check out Capital One Trade Credit. If you got value from this conversation with Dan, please share it with your network. People around you look to leaders like you to understand where they should invest their limited time and attention. So share it with them if you got value from it. And if you would, those reviews on Apple and Spotify and Stitcher or whatever podcast player you are using, those mean more to us than you know. If you could give us a little review there, that would be fantastic. I have no idea why I said fantastic that way, but nonetheless, I'm being honest. We would really appreciate it, and we value the feedback from you. Speaking of feedback, we want this to be the best podcast you listen to. So if you have ideas for us to improve, or maybe topics to cover, or guests to have on the show, or any way to make this better, maybe an asking for a friend, where you have a serious challenge that you are dealing with, and you want us to do the heavy lifting to make your life better, hell, outsource that. We'll do it for you. That's what I like to do. Send it my way. Bradley at bradleyhartmanandco.com. And if you're not on our newsletter list that comes out twice every month, you, my friend, you're missing out. I promise you. I put my best work there, and I promise when we put this thing out, it's going to be worth reading. So check out the Construction Leadership newsletter. You can go to our website, bradleyhartmanandco.com. Scroll down to the bottom of every single page in there, or especially at the blog. You can sign up there, and we'll get you on the list. And if we ever fail to deliver value, you can unsubscribe with one click, but you can bet your bottom dollar, buddy, I'm busting my tail every single week trying to write stuff that is worthy of your time and attention. All right, I think I'm done here. We're going to close out with our leadership mantra. You, my friend, are owed nothing. Deliver value first. Thanks for listening. Make it a great week.